So let's go on to Phoenix Rising, where we have them seventh. The fans tied for sixth. Again, how did you mean this many people vote on this and tie? I don't understand. Um, John, there's been some changes here, but a lot of faces that stayed the same. Who's in, who's out?
Well, Paul Mudoka is in on the sideline as the new manager here. You lose Rocco Rios Novo, Renzo Zambrano's gone, then Fuenmayor and Lawrence Weick are out from the back line. And it has been a lot of signings in Phoenix. I think Damian Rivera is a big one out on the wing. A couple of MLS Next Pro guys, whether it's Nobo Okello in the central midfield, Carl Saint, a familiar name to some USL fans, coming in on loan. I think Tristan Henry could be a difference maker in goal. But I mean, if you're looking at the depth chart, it's a lot of new names in Phoenix.
So, Ryan, this is a team that made the playoffs. If you kind of heard the way that Phoenix fans talked about this team, you thought they came in last. But there was, again, some disconnect between the front office and the fans. Do you think they are going to make the playoffs again and ownership kind of make right of some wrongs? Or do you think that this is going to be a subpar season from the Rising?
Yeah, I found it interesting that the two clubs in the Western Conference that we felt like had a large disconnect between the front office and the fan base, and especially evident in the results on the pitch, were tied in our fan rankings and we're right next to each other in our USL show rankings. Kind of shows that both teams are entering this year kind of with something to prove. And I feel like with Phoenix appointing Pamadou Ka as their next manager is a step in the right direction. We saw how successful he was with Pacific FC in the Canadian Premier League. He won 52% of his games with North Texas in MLS Next Pro, and he was a very quality assistant coach for Charlotte FC. I feel like having someone like him at the helm is enough to get those results from a Phoenix Rising team who finished last season and with not 6 defeats in their last 9 games that still managed to sneak into the playoffs. But it was a team that was hurting for consistent results week in and week out, that if you just start stringing together some of these points on the board, I feel like there is enough here that they can get into the playoffs, but I wouldn't count on them being a home playoff team.
Phil, I'm looking at this team on paper, and there's a name that is listed as a depth piece that I feel like has to find a way onto the pitch, and that is Formella, where, he was the guy for Oakland, and then everything fell apart after he was sent to Phoenix. And he's still a good player. Was last year a bit of a down year? I think so. But how much of that was not really a lot of playing to his strengths? If you were to try to get him into the team because he's still quality, who do you put him in over?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because it does feel like, I don't know, Formella feels almost like left over in a weird way, where the mentality of the club and sort of their whole strategy when it comes to like who they signed and all these things, it's like they've obviously focused a lot on like MLS Next Pro and like young players, and it does feel like Formella is gonna kind of, I don't know, I think he's gonna be probably a bit player like compared to what we're used to. He's 29 in a team of like, I don't know, I almost picture like the Will Smith Fresh Prince meme of like in the flower costume, like he's with a bunch of kids. To me, he does feel almost like a holdover from like a bygone era of Phoenix, that like he's sticking around because he is still a quality pro and like he is going to be able to contribute, especially off the bench. But I don't know that he like sees many like starting minutes given the presence of Cabral now full time. I think Margaritha has been mentioned in the chat and is like obviously was a huge like reason why they were even relevant towards the end of last season. And with Rivera like coming in, I don't know that there's necessarily the room in this team for Darius Formella that there probably was when they were figuring out, hey, who are we? It feels like Phoenix is saying like we are a young team that is going to like lean on these young attackers to bring us where we want to go.
We kind of mentioned the 2023 team and that kind of era. Did y'all realize that Darnell King was brought in to be a coach at Phoenix?
Yes.
Okay. I saw that today when I was looking through things. I just did not
They
see
cut to
that.
him on the sidelines like quite a bit last season, to the point where it like became notable to me, just like as a, you know, the deal if you like watch a team a lot and you just have weird shit that you keep picking up on.
Yeah.
See, I never listen to broadcasts. I just have them on, but I don't listen to them. So
Well, that
maybe
does
I
it
just
for
saw
ya.
him.
Yeah.
I just saw them and I just never realized it was him. But yeah, I did not realize that Darnell King was assistant coach.
Legend. Love Darnell King.
I also love Darnell King. John, we said we were going to have a conversation about this. I said this team is going to be a contender in the West. Keep in mind that meant I had them as fourth. I like what I kind of see with this back line. I do like Quayshow. Every time I do think about him, I think about that mental penalty he took in the final, and that is just my lasting image of him, but it's fine. Mama Traore is a fantastic player when he is running right. Marboy I love that guy. I think he's going to be sold for big money. And then you see a Colin Smith who has the potential but hasn't quite gotten it out of him. But then, like Paul Maduka, he seems like a guy who could get it out of him. And all those things that I wanted to see out of Smith, I'm thinking that Cobb maybe can. Am I looking at too much potential upside versus what's currently there?
I think if you look at Traore and Pop Marboy, that's an unassailable elite center back group. Like there's no two ways around it. And then if one of them gets injured, if Pop Marboy gets sold, the depth is really bad. I think the way that Ka is going to set up this team, given what we saw with him, both in the Canadian Premiership and with North Texas, is a rather aggressive press on the wings. And it say Damian Rivera or Gerald Margarita gets beat. Suddenly that's like Emile Quayshow in a one-on-one, or that's Colin Smith in a one-on-one. You need the help from the midfield. It feels like Phoenix, because of the way that they really hang their hat on being a high possession team and a pressing team, comes in with principles that don't always match perfectly to what they've got on the field. So given that, given the depth, given the fact that this is just a young team that might take some time to gel together, I think Phoenix is going to be more of a bubble team than a legitimate contender by the season's end.